Hello, folks. This is Ross Fleming of Fleming Recordings, Nelson, speaking to you from the home of Mr. and Mrs. John Hobden, farmers on with headquarters at the Lister Post Office. Of course, I must explain that Mr. and Mrs. Hobden, together with Mr. and Mrs. Ross Fleming, are the proud grandparents of 4 lovely children, the sons and daughters of Gordon and Lorraine Fleming of Nelson. Lorraine is a daughter of Mr. and Mrs. John Hobden. So I feel rather at home here, and I should, because I've just finished a wonderful meal. And it's been a great pleasure to come and visit these people near Creston, and we're going to leave in a few minutes to see the Misters Huscroft that also live in this district. Now, Mr. Hobden, what is your full name?
John Albert.
John Albert Hobden. And where were you born?
Minden, Ontario.
Linden?
Minden.
Minden, Ontario. And when did you come to BC?
In 1901.
1901. And where did you settle when you came to BC?
Very near Creston.
Very near Creston.
Yes, part of the town site today.
Well, your parents, you came with your parents.
Yes.
What was your parents' name?
John Hobden.
John Hobden. You were named after them.
Yes.
Well, now we're continuing the at least the Christian names anyway, aren't we? Our youngest grandson is called John Ross Fleming. So the John is still figuring in the name. And what was their occupation? I'll take them first. What was their occupation when they came?
Logging and fruit farming.
Oh, yes. What year did they come?
1901.
1901, oh, yes. And logging and fruit farming?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, yes. And was there much of a settlement then?
No, there was only a boxcar for a station at the time we arrived.
I see. And not very many buildings in Creston?
No, a few hotels and
they were in that part that is down below the railroad. That is the old town, was it?
yes.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I think I remember that when I first came up to Creston. I don't know what the occasion was, but I noticed that, in fact, the business street was down there at that time, wasn't it?
Yes.
And now, see, how old were you then when you, see, did we get your age when you were born?
I was 2 years old at the time.
And when you came, so you were born in 1900, were you?
1899.
1899. Mm-hmm. And you went to school in Creston?
Yes.
About how many pupils would there be in the Creston school at that time?
Well, there would be probably 20 pupils.
I see. Incidentally, do you remember your first teacher?
Yes, it was Mrs Mallandaine.
Mrs Mallandaine.
Yes.
Who later was Mrs Mallandaine. Or was
Yes.
she married then?
Ramsay was the name.
Miss Ramsay.
Yes.
At that time. I see. Yes, well, Mr. Mallandaine was quite an old-timer of Creston, too, wasn't he? And
Yes. Magistrate.
Magistrate, yes. I knew him, not through the courts, but through him coming to Nelson and staying at the Hume Hotel where I used to work. Well, now, when did your parents have much of a farm at that time, or when did you take up farming?
And they had 40 acres there in Creston.
Oh, yes. And then when did, I suppose you didn't come to, did they come out here to Lister, or did you?
No, my mother did.
Oh, your mother
It was after my father's death.
Oh, I see. And then you took up land here. How many acres did you have then, and how many have you now? What did you start out with?
Well, we had 26 acres left of orchard in Creston, and we have 160 here.
Oh, yes. And then your son has some too?
Yes.
And then you were telling me a little while ago that you have some pasture land too, but
yes, 300 acres.
300 acres.
Mm-hmm.
How far is that away?
About 2 miles.
About 2 miles.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's not very far in a farming country, is it?
No.
It's like the next door. Well, now, can you tell us some interesting things about the early days?
Well, I expect I could with a little
preparation. This
Yeah.
is kind of taking you by surprise, possibly. The American trains, railroad was in here pretty early too, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was running when we come in here.
Oh, yes. I see.
Yes.
They came up to Port Hill, through Port Hill.
Yes, to Cuscanook.
Cuscanook, yes.
Yes.
Yes, I remember some early day excursions. They took a boat from Nelson and went down through Port Hill. I guess they went right to Bonner's Ferry at that time as excursions from Nelson. Of course, in the very early days, the boats used to make regular trips up that way. And and the Great Northern discontinued though some time ago, didn't they?
Yes, I don't know what year.
Mm-hmm. Now, can you tell me, Mr. Hobden, about some of the early roads that were used before the railroad come in?
Yes, the only road we had to travel on between farms was the old tote road used by the CPR at the time of construction.
And that started where and ended where?
Oh, it run from Cuscanook right through, but we only used a small portion of it between Creston and Derrickson.
Oh, I see. And that was used to bring in the supplies to the camps when the CPR came through, and of course was used after that too, for other than railroad travel. Now, I think you mentioned a road coming up from the south on a well-defined route.
Yes, that was the old trail from Walla Walla, Washington to Fort Steele at the time of the gold rush. And the trail is still to be seen on some property of ours, quite well defined, in fact.
Is that so?
Yeah.
And that, at one time, that had quite a lot of traffic, didn't it? Coming up from Walla Walla that would be during the gold strikes and so on in the East Kootenai?
Yes.
That would be built possibly around 1864 or 65 and around those years, would it?
I suppose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, yes, and then you have another road, we might as well mention it, a road that is fairly close to you here, from Port Hill to the Beaver Meadows. And a man by the name of Hall had a farm up there, and the mountain was called after him, was it?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's very good. It gives us an idea of what is here at the beginning. And you have a very nice farm here. It's a wonderful valley, and I think a lot of people are quite aware of the soldier settlement plan that was here, instituted by Mr. Lister, and that is fairly close, adjoining your property, isn't it, or fairly close to your property. Well, thanks very much, Mr. Hobden, for this interview. It's been very nice having this interview. I didn't quite realize that our close relations were quite here so early, and I'm very pleased to know that you're such an old-timer. Although you feel very similar to I do. You think it was your parents that were the old-timers.
Yeah.
So do I. But nevertheless, we have to carry on the traditions and the stories of the early days, because we're the only ones left. And
well, thank you, Mr. Fleming. It's been a pleasure to be interviewed by you.
Well, that's just fine, and it's been a pleasure to come to your home and enjoy your hospitality. Thanks very much.